Hey y'all, so today I want to show you how I do my drip mugs. This is something I'm going to be teaching at TumblerCon, and I just wanted to show you how I do mine. We're going to be doing a mug with the dark chocolate. Most of you have seen this before, but I also want to do one that I personally haven't seen before. I want to do a Merlot and I want to do a whiskey. So doing that, I need more of a translucent color and less solid. And I'm going to be working with trying to get the right tone for both of those. So let's get started. So the first one I'm using rustic oak, and this is from Counterculture. And let me shake it up just a little bit. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to grab my popsicle stick and I'm sticking the popsicle stick down into my colorant, because what I want to do is I want to add just enough, and I add the colorant before I add in the epoxy in case I have too much or too little. I can always adjust it before wasting the epoxy. What I want to show you now is this cup. Let me show you real quick. This guy right here, you cannot even begin to see how beautiful this glitter is. This has always been my favorite glitter. It's actually Champagne Palace from Mr. Nola's. It's almost like an opal, but it's got like this champagne-y color to it. These, actually let me show you right here. These two are the same, okay? But this one I did with like a metallic gold base, and this one with a white base. And I thought I couldn't love it anymore until I tried this one. Oh, it's the most beautiful color I've ever seen. And then the second one that I'm doing is this one right here. It's the North Pole Whiskey, and this is on our 12-ounce shorty. So for this one, again, I'm testing the waters with it because my goal is to make a whiskey color. I don't want it to be a solid brown. I want it to be an opaque, whiskey-looking color. So I went and I got the brown opaque and the red opaque. And I'm going to start with brown. I don't know if I need to add any of the, let me shake it up real good. I don't know if I need to add any of the red or not. But what I got the red for was that cup I just showed you. Where did I put it? This one is Merlot. And so I put that on a wine glass, and again, I don't want a thick red. I don't want it to be a solid red like the chocolate from the coffee cups. I want it to be more of a translucent, like opaque kind of color. So I want to start very little, and again, that's why I'm mixing before. Okay, so I'm just going to add a little dash of the brown. I don't want a whole lot because I want to keep it see-through. And then let's go ahead and add in a little bit of our epoxy to our dark brown. I want to make sure I have enough epoxy in here that I don't run out. So it's always better to have too much than too little. And then let's mix that up to check to see like my color that I'm going to come out with. And the best way to check to see the true color of what this is I just pull my popsicle stick out just every now and then, just to kind of get a gauge of what color I'm working with. Okay, so let's go ahead and add in the epoxy to my other one. This is the one that I'm going to make my whiskey cup out of. So the whole point in this one is to keep it pretty translucent, like a whiskey or a bourbon was. I don't want it to be dark brown and solid like the last one I just did. So as I'm mixing, I'm just checking to make sure that I'm getting the color and the consistency that I'm looking for. And the best way to do this, especially since it's going to be on a white cup is I'm smearing it across the edge of my clear cup just so I can see what kind, how opaque that it's coming out. You see there, it's a little bit, I can't decide if it's too brown or not. Okay, so let's go ahead and work on my wine red. I went ahead and just added the red into the epoxy because obviously I'm gonna need red for wine. And there's no way of really telling the right color without just going ahead and mixing it. So I'm gonna stir up this red. And then let's add in just a drop or two of blue. This, I'm afraid to do too much, so trying to be, I want to put it on my popsicle stick, and then that way I can see how much I'm adding in. Whoop. And we can adjust as we go. So I'm going to take that out so it doesn't get more blue in there. And you can see it's giving a more purpley tone, which isn't bad. But I'm also going to need to add in just a hint of brown. I actually Googled how to make wine red, and these are the colors. So I'll scrape it off the side. And actually the red and the blue that I'm using are translucent, but the brown is opaque. I've searched for a translucent brown and I cannot find one. They have amber, but not a brown. And judging by the color that was on the packet, amber is just too yellow. So I have to be careful with adding in the brown just because I don't want it to be too dark or too solid. I want to keep this as a see-through, more of a translucent red color. So as you can see, it's turning out. And the best way for me to test, because the cup's going to be white, so putting it on a clear, side of a cup, I'm not always going to see the best color. So I put it on a white paper towel, and then I'm able to really see what I'm working with. So I think I need a lot more of a red. I need a deeper red color. The blue and the brown give me that deepness, but I need to make sure that I keep it a very vibrant red. And let me go back and just stir these. And let's see how it looks on the paper towel. And I feel like it's a little too, oops. I feel like it needs a little hint of red. Hopefully I didn't add too much. I don't want it to be red. I'm looking more for bourbon red or whiskey red. And I'm just gonna keep going back and forth until I find the right shade that I'm looking for. So let's try this one. And I think that one looks a lot better. And let's try our chocolate. It does look a little dark, but I think once it gets on the cup, it'll look like dark chocolate. Okay, so I've let all of my epoxy sit for, it's been about 30-40 minutes, I guess. And I keep checking it about every 10 minutes to stir to make sure it doesn't get too hard too quick. So what I'm going to do now is grab a big glob and I'm just going to smear it across the top here. And how I knew this was ready is as I smeared it across the side of the cup, and then I let the cup sit there, and so I could see how it dripped like inside the cup. And once I decided that it wasn't moving too much, but it wasn't too hard, it's definitely something you have to, it's a learned habit, I guess, to know when it's just right. Because if you let it sit in there too long, it will become a solid hard rock and you will be starting all over, wasting epoxy, wasting colorant. And so I'm just going to smear it, it's a straight line, all the way around, and it's easy to let it drip down, so I don't want to go too far down. But I want to make sure I do get to the top rim, otherwise it's going to get too thin up there. So let's let that one sit, see how it starts to drip. And while we're waiting on that one, you can see here my dark chocolate. I'm testing to see how it pulls down the side of the cup. You can see there how it's starting to drip. Okay, so you can see here it's starting to drip down my cup. And it's starting to pull away a little bit from that top rim. So I flip it upside down to get the motion of it to pull back towards the top rim of the cup. I don't want it too thin. But I also don't want to leave it this way too long, or else the drips should be thicker at the bottom. So I need to make sure that the thickness remains on bottom. So I'm gonna actually add a little bit more. I'm trying to get these strings off. I don't want the strings to hit the cup. So I'm gonna add a little more to that top rim. And when it goes on, it looks not very smooth, but if you let it sit for a minute, it will find its way to smooth itself out. So you can see it's a little bare on the top, so I'm just gonna add some more. And it's starting to get really thick in my cup, so it's getting harder to scrape it. This might be my last. And I'm just gonna smear it where it's looking bare, and as you can see, it's not perfectly smooth, but it's going to smooth itself out. And I'm gonna just play with it until I flip it back and forth, spin it until I get it right how I want it. So I actually think I might have a little too much in this one little spot. So I'm actually going to scrape a little bit of it off or rearrange it a little. Because if it's too thick, it's my drip's gonna go too far down the cup, and the more weight of the epoxy, the thicker the bottom drip part's gonna be, and it's gonna look too thin proportionally to the top, because the top's definitely gonna be thinner because it's, you know, moving downwards. So I don't want it to be. So I'm gonna work it back up And again, it's gonna look funny, but it's going to settle. And I'm actually pulling it probably a little higher than the rim. Sorry, I'm not in the picture. And I'm just going to fast forward the video really quick, a little faster of a pace, so you can see I'm letting it sit there for a few minutes, and then I'm just gonna keep working it like I have been. So I'm checking that one and just putting it on the edge to see if it's ready yet. That's my whiskey. And as you can see, my wine, I'm really loving these drips. But I just want to make sure I'm not getting too bare of a top rim. So I'm going to keep pulling it up, trying to make it a little more even. I don't want to pull from the very, very bottom. That's where it needs to be thicker. But the middle, bring it up just so it's a little more even. And like I said, it'll smooth itself back out. And I'm going to speed through the video just a smidge faster, just so you can kind of see a little bit of the process, but it's kind of the same that I've been doing. I'm going to spin it and keep pulling up as needed. So it's looking good. Let's go ahead and start working on my dark chocolate. I think this is about where I want it. So same as the one before, I'm going to smear it across the top edge. And even though this is the same epoxy from the same batch, it's still a little different. Like it's gonna cure in its own time because what I added inside of it was different, and the amount it's about the same, but it's still different. So it's going to thicken up at a different rate. So I'm just going to continue to smear, get a glob of it and smear it across my top rim. I'm doing this in a little bit faster speed since I did it slow speed on the first one. And it's getting really thick. The handle, what I do on my handle, I don't purposefully drip down the handle. I do the top edge like I would anything else. And I just let gravity pull it down the handle on its own. And I'm going to wipe off some of I had some stringy pieces, so I'm going to wipe those off. And let's check on this. I'll pull it back up. You can see the bottom is getting a lot thicker than the top, but I don't want to pull from the bottom of the drip. I want it to be naturally thicker at the tips, but it's starting to run over my logo. Okay, so this one, you can see it's already starting to drip down a little bit. So I'm just gonna keep working these back and forth until they're good to go. Okay, so I stepped away, we're coming back, just a little step away. Check on these. The chocolate, as you can see, is starting to make its way down. I am gonna add just a little bit more in a couple of little spaces around the rim where it's pulling away too much. And as you can see, I just gotta fix that top rim where it's always pulling off too much. So I'm gonna start working this one up. There's a great shot of the glitter and how beautiful it is. It's seriously my favorite color glitter, y'all. Okay, so work this up. Again, it helps it going from dripping too far down and also from having a bare rim. And you see from this angle, it's sticking up. It's okay, it'll smooth out. So my wine, I've got some good deep drips, and these are all natural. I didn't make them, right? They just made their own way. Okay, so now that my cup is kind of where I want it, I've got the drips as far down as I want them to be, but I don't have the top, like you saw me doing it, pulling it back up to the top so that the top's not super thin. Now that that's happening, I've got that one on my turner, and you can see right here, it's staying put. All looks good. It's not too thin at the top. But I'm still getting that thickness at the bottom of the drip, so it looks very natural. And all those times that I would bring it back up and mix it and mess with it, all of those are gone. So we'll let that spin and I'll show you when it's done. And now let's check back in on my chocolate. As you can see here, the top rim, it seems to be holding. It doesn't seem to be going anywhere. And my drips aren't dripping down any further. It seems to be in place. It's not moving anywhere. Okay, and now my chocolate has pretty much stopped dripping. I didn't have to do as much work to that one. It kind of just found its own little place and hasn't moved much. So it's always an up or down. You're not sure if it's going to move too much, too little. I thought this one wasn't quite ready yet. And I thought the Merlot was good and done. So it's all up in the air. This one I really didn't have to do a whole lot to, but as you can see, it didn't drip as far as the Merlot, but that's okay. Quite frankly, I kind of like that it doesn't cover the logo or the thing on there. So now that this has pretty much stopped moving, I'm gonna throw this one on the counter. So you guys saw how I did the wine and the morning mug. So I didn't go ahead and do the detail on the whiskey, but you can see from the pictures, it's the same exact way as the other two. Thanks for tuning in, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel.